اللهم صل على محمد طب القلوب ودوائها وعافية الأجساد وشفائها ونور الأبصار وجلائها وعلى آله وصحبه وبارك وسلم.
الحمد لله وكفى والصلاة والسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى خصوصا على أفضلهم وخاتم النبيين محمد الأمين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد. فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ونزلنا عليك الكتاب تبيانا لكل شيء وهدى ورحمة وبشرى للمسلمين. صدق الله العظيم. We begin with Allah's blessed name. We praise Him and we glorify Him as He ought to be praised and glorified. And we pray for peace and for blessings on all His noble messengers, and in particular on the last of them all, the blessed Prophet Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. Brothers and sisters, respected Imam, brothers and sisters here in Masjid Al-Ghufran, in Taman Tun, Dr. Ismail in Kuala Lumpur. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Our topic tonight is one on which I spoke recently at the International Islamic University in Gombak on Khidr alayhi salam and akhir zaman. And we repeat the lecture tonight here, and we probably will have to repeat it elsewhere, an indication of how important is this subject. It is a fascinating subject, one that you would want to understand and grasp and then teach it to others, particularly to your own family. And we begin with Nabi Musa alayhi salam, who is the prophet par excellence of Banu Israel. And in beginning with Nabi Musa alayhi salam, we are already recognizing that much that is to be presented in this subject is being presented to the Jews. A message is being sent to the Jews, and we invite them to listen to that message tonight, the Jewish people, because this is our prophet in addition to being our prophet. Nabi Musa alayhi salam, and the story is in Sahih Bukhari, gave a khutbah in Sinai, the desert, not the hospital in Manhattan, the desert. And someone came to him, an Israelite, and said to him, "O Musa alayhi salam, what a wonderful khutbah. You must be the most learned man in the world." And Nabi Musa alayhi salam replied, "Yes, I am the most learned man in the world." And at that juncture I knew that this entire episode is sent to Banu Israel, because that's what they believe they are. They believe that they are the elite of mankind, that they are superior to everybody else, and they know that I am speaking the truth. They know that they cannot refute me, that they are the elite of mankind, and all the rest of mankind are referred to as al-ummiyun, sometimes translated as the Gentiles, and otherwise known as the cockroaches. We are inferior people, and they are the elite. The world is theirs. They are the most learned, and heaven is reserved for them. And Allah responds in the Quran, and He says, بَعْدَ أَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ وَإِنْ زَعَمْتُمْ أَنَّكُمْ أَوْلِيَاءُ لِلَّهِ مِنْ دُونِ النَّاسِ فَتَمَنَّوا الْمَوْتَ إِن كُنْتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. If you do believe that you are the chosen people of Allah, you are the most learned, and heaven is reserved for you, then why don't you desire death? Huh? If you are indeed truthful in your beliefs. But no, they will never do that. And so these words are put into the mouth of Musa alayhi salam, in my opinion, and Allah knows best. He says, yes, I am the most learned of all men, actually speaking on behalf of his people who have that misguided belief. And let me repeat once again that whenever I give my opinion on a matter, as I've done now, I don't want you to accept my opinion. No. Not until you are convinced that it is correct. Only then do you accept another man's opinion. So when he said, yes, I am the most learned of all men, then Allah responded and said to him, and of course the message is going to Banu Israel, including those who now control the state of Israel. No, you are not. You are not the most learned of all men. There is a servant of mine who is more learned than you are. And if the Jews are listening to this lecture, they're going to be astonished. Who is he? Who is the most learned of all men? And as we proceed with this lecture, you will realize that Allah is speaking particularly about akhir zaman. That who is the most learned of all men in akhir zaman? So Allah says, so Musa alayhi salam says, I want to meet him. I want to meet him. I invite the Jews tonight to repeat what Musa alayhi salam said. I want to meet him, so that we who follow Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam, we can take you to him tonight. So Allah says that you will meet him at the place where the two oceans meet. Majma'ul Bahrain, Majma'ul Bahrain, at the place where the two oceans meet. And we'll come back to that in a moment, inshallah. So Allah says, take a fish and put it in a basket. Ikan goreng, ikan bakar, I don't know which one. And put the fish in the basket. And travel to the place where the two oceans meet. And when the fish jumps out of the basket, meaning that the dead has come back to life, and the fish makes its way into the water, That's where you're going to meet him. So Musa alayhi salam took with him a young man. The Quran does not tell us who he was, but the young people are always attracted to those who are teachers and those who are in search of the most learned of all. So the young man went with him, with the basket, with the fish. And this is where the story begins, or the narrative begins, in the Quran. And it is to be found in Suratul Kahf of the Quran. Now Suratul Kahf of the Quran is a unique surah. Oh yes. Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam said that the greatest tests and trials that mankind will ever experience from the time of Adam alayhi salam to the last day would be the fitna of Dajjal, the fitna of Dajjal, the false Messiah, who seeks to impersonate the true Messiah. The true Messiah is Nabi Isa alayhi salam, Jesus, the son of Mary. Every schoolboy knows that. When the true Messiah comes back, said Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, he's going to be a ruler, Hakim. Will his rule be subject to the authority of the Security Council? Would he have to obey the Security Council of the UN? Oh, come on, what nonsense. Tell them for me in Washington that when Nabi Isa alayhi salam returns as a ruler, he is going to rule the world. And his is going to be the supreme rule. And no one can rival his rule. And Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam said further that his rule will be based on justice. Those who today rule the world with their blood-stained feet are doing so with arrogance, with brutality, with injustice, with false flag terrorism and what have you. There's never been a worse people like these. If Dajjal, I'm sorry I have to speak slowly now. If Dajjal is to impersonate the true Messiah, I don't know the Bahasa word for impersonate, and even if you tell me I might not be able to pronounce it. If he is to impersonate the true Messiah and convince the Jews that he is indeed the true Messiah, then of course he would have to also rule the world. Isn't that so? Don't you agree with me? Well, he's almost there now. It probably will be not just another few years, and he would have Israel installed as the ruling state in the world, which is why we have big wars coming up now, probably within a few months from now. And those big wars would be intended to deliver to Israel the status of ruling state in the world. And when Israel becomes the ruling state in the world, that's the plan. Then he's going to emerge in human form. He's already here, but you can't see him. And then he's going to stand up in Jerusalem. He's going to come from Khorasan, but he's going to stand up in Jerusalem as the ruler of Israel and say, I am the Messiah. But he would not be the Messiah. He would be the false Messiah. He would be Dajjal. And he uses lots of strategies to achieve his rule over the world. One of them is money and the economy. And that is our subject for Saturday night, Yawmu Sabtu. I think the lecture is somewhere in Subanjaya. So do please attend that lecture. So the Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, that the greatest fitna that mankind will experience from the time of Adam alayhi salam to the last day would be the fitna of Dajjal, the test, the trials, the deceptions of Dajjal. And if he tests us and we fail, he's going to succeed and he will rule the world. It is instructive that nowhere in the Quran is the word Dajjal to be found. Nowhere. But the Prophet said, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam, that if you recite the first 10 ayat of Surah Al-Kahf, and in another hadith, the last 10 as well, it will protect you from the fitna of Dajjal. And so Surah Al-Kahf is recognized as the surah of ilmu akhir zaman. This is the surah of ilmu akhir zaman. Because Dajjal is the mastermind of akhir zaman. And the beginning of this surah offers you protection from his fitna. But the surah does more than that, and we will come to it inshallah later. So it is in this surah, Surah Al-Kahf, and it's not by accident that Allah now chooses to narrate the episode of Musa alayhi salam traveling to the place where the two oceans meet in search of the most learned of all men. This is not by accident, because there is a link between Dajjal and this most learned of all men. And tonight we speaking to you, the Jewish people, and we the followers of Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, we taking you on a journey so you can meet those who are most learned, more learned than you are. He is known as Khidr alayhi salam, but his name is not to be found in the Quran. Why? It's an interesting question. Why does Allah not put the name Dajjal in the Quran? Why? When no one poses a greater threat to faith than Dajjal. No one, not even Shaitan. Why is the name Khidr not found in the Quran? Why? Is it by accident? No, it's not. And as we proceed, if I forget, remind me, we'll explain why, in our opinion, these names are not to be found in the Quran. But this journey on which he now embarks is to be found in Surah Al-Kahf. And I want to say to you, to share with you, since I've been studying this subject, for about 20 years now or more, ilmu akhir zaman, I want to share with you my opinion that there is no passage in the whole Quran more important for understanding ilmu akhir zaman and for understanding akhir zaman than this passage of the Quran, the encounter of Musa alayhi salam with Khidr alayhi salam, which is in Surah Al-Kahf. So you may want to go back to your Quran and sit down and study the passage. I wrote this book, Surah Al-Kahf in the Modern Age. And in this book there is a chapter on the encounter of Musa alayhi salam and Khidr alayhi salam. But don't read it. Go first to the Quran and study it yourself. And after you have studied it, then read what I have said. Don't miss your homework. Why is he Khidr? Khidr means green. So when I teach this subject to children, I call him Mr. Green. Mr. Green. Why is he called green? No one else in the Quran or in the Hadith has a name which is the color green. The Prophet said sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam that Khidr alayhi salam one went to a land which was barren, brown, nothing growing. And he sat down. And when he sat down there, everything became luxuriously green, like Malaysia. You know how green Malaysia is? When the Arab from the desert comes to Malaysia, he said, this is heaven, this is paradise. All the greenery here. So when he sat down in that barren land, like Abu Dhabi and Dubai and everything became green. Why is it that he caused everything to become green? The answer is in the story as we proceed. So Musa alayhi salam is in search of this most learned of all men, who is known as Mr. Green, Khidr alayhi salam. When I use the word alayhi salam, a problem emerges, because our religious culture in Islam is that we speak of prophets and we say Musa alayhi salam, Isa alayhi salam, Sulaiman alayhi salam. So is he a prophet? Why do you say Khidr alayhi salam? No, we do not know. Is he a prophet or is he not? The Quran does not answer that question. The ahadith do not answer that question. And this speaker will not answer that question. But we know that a prophet of Allah, who is one of the supreme prophets, has to go to him as a student sitting with a teacher. A teacher of prophets? This is a man of great stature. And so the Jews should be interested in knowing about him. As they were traveling to the place where the two oceans meet, we come upon the second problem. Is this to be understood literally? That this is the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean, and where these two oceans meet at Cape Town, that's what they told me, Cape Town. you will find the most learned of all men in Cape Town. My opinion, respectfully so, is that this is not to be interpreted or understood literally. And we come up now with a second problem. The second problem is that there is a methodology. There is a methodology which is very prominent in today's world of Islam, which declares, falsely so in my opinion, but I speak respectfully, not disrespectfully, that only Allah and His Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, and the early Muslims, the Aslaf, plural of Salaf, only they are authorized to interpret the Quran and the Hadith. And if they did not interpret, you cannot interpret. No. Tabule. And I say, no, you're wrong. Knowledge did not stop 1400 years ago. There's more knowledge in the Quran that was communicated. There is more knowledge in the Quran that was communicated to us by the Aslaf. And that new knowledge that comes will explain the Quran in addition to what was already given in the Quran. And so there was a mufassir of the Quran, Imam al-Baydawi, rahimahullah. And Imam al-Baydawi says that the two oceans are not the Atlantic and Pacific, but he refers to two other oceans symbolically, as for example the ocean of knowledge that comes from above, the ocean of knowledge that is internally received and didn't stop 1400 years ago, is still coming, and the ocean of knowledge that is externally acquired, scientific knowledge. And I am persuaded that this is the correct interpretation of the two oceans. That in akhir zaman in particular, you will find the most learned of all men, the only one who can penetrate the world in akhir zaman, the only one who can explain the world in akhir zaman, the only one who can respond to the challenges of the world in akhir zaman, is the one who stands at Majma'ul Bahrain, that scholar of Islam who combines knowledge externally acquired and the knowledge internally received. Now I have to stop, because I have to answer these critics. They're coming after me. Now they're even ridiculing me, but I will not respond to their ridicule. Is there knowledge that can still be received today? New knowledge. Let me take them, because you already know, I don't have to tell you. Let me tell them that Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam said, hadith is in Sahih Bukhari, he said that Nabuwa or prophethood is comprised of how many parts? Help me somebody. 46 different parts. This young man traveled all the way from Britain to be with us here tonight. I won't mention his name for security reasons. He's got to go back to Britain. Prophethood is comprised of 46 different parts. He said, after me, not me, the Prophet, after me, nothing remains of prophethood in the world except one part. And that one part of Nabuwa or prophethood, which is still here in Masjid al-Ghufran, in Tamantun Dr. Ismail, in Kuala Lumpur, is ru'ya sadika and ru'ya salihah. Good visions and true visions, and good dreams and true dreams. And they still remain in the world up to this day. And so knowledge can still come to us now. New knowledge. And that knowledge comes from Allah. And that knowledge has the status of being the last part of prophethood still remaining in the world. They cannot critically respond to this. No, sir. Of course, when that knowledge comes, it does not have the status of the Quran. No. It is not binding and incumbent upon anyone. No. And so when someone shares that knowledge with others, you have to say, Allahu A'lam. Allah knows best. It is not obligatory, it is not binding, it is not incumbent on anyone. But new knowledge still comes into the world. And right here in this masjid I gave you an example of the Surah Al-Ma'idah. Remember, don't take the Jews and don't take the Christians as your friends and allies. You remember? And right here I explained to you that Allah is not speaking about all Jews and He's not speaking about all Christians. No. Well then, which Jews and which Christians? And this was never asked before. This first time it's being asked. And then I said the answer is right there in the words which follow. Ba'duhum awliya'u ba'd, meaning, do not take such Jews and do not take such Christians as your friends and allies, who themselves are friends and allies of each other. Jews and Christians were never friends and allies of each other until Western Christianity, not Eastern, not Russia, not Greece, not Romania, not Bulgaria, not Poland. Western Christianity, Britain, France, United States, Germany, when these Western Christians joined together with the European Jews to establish the Judeo-Christian alliance, which today has NATO as its military arm. This is what Allah is speaking about. Don't take them as your friends and allies. And if you do, وَمَنْ يَتَوَلَّهُ مِنْكُمْ فَإِنَّهُ مِنْهُمْ, you've lost your Islam, as they've lost it in Libya, which today is a Zionist state of Libya. And so this is new knowledge. No one ever explained this verse of the Quran like this before. It's the first time. But does that mean because it is the first time, it is inadmissible, it is false? Not at all. It is new knowledge. I am sure it is the correct interpretation of the Quran. But you must never be arrogant to say, this is the truth. You say, Allah knows best. Allah knows best. And just present it and let the people decide. And so he said that the two oceans are the ocean of knowledge externally acquired, your scientific knowledge, for example, and the ocean of knowledge internally received. And that ocean of knowledge has not dried up, it's still there. I hope the Jews are listening, because this is of critical importance in the next 20 years that lie ahead of us. That's the difference between us and you. And tonight's lecture is directed to you, the Jews. My teacher of blessed memory, Maulana Dr. Muhammad Fadlur Rahman Ansari Rahimahullah, his scholarship was Majma'ul Bahrain. He represented Majma'ul Bahrain, the ocean of knowledge externally acquired and the ocean of knowledge internally received and mutually integrated into a harmonious whole. That's methodology. So they're traveling towards the place where the two oceans meet. And as they reached close to that place, they stopped at a rock to take a little rest. And as Musa alayhi salam put his head next to the rock to take a little sleep, the fish came alive. As I told you, I don't know whether it was ikan goreng or ikan bakar, but the fish came alive. And the fish jumped out of the basket. So there's something about this place, somebody here who can bring the dead back to life. And the fish made its way into the water. And the young man saw it. When Musa alayhi salam woke up, he then proceeded on his journey, not knowing what happened. Proceeded on his journey beyond the rock. But now, the journey becomes tiresome, wearisome. He's tired, bogged down. لَقَدْ لَقِينَا مِنْ سَفَرِنَا هَذَا نَصَبًا, says Surah Al-Kahf. This journey has become tiresome. A very profound lesson. So long as they were traveling towards the rock, there was no tiredness. You could go to 90 years of age and you have a walking stick, and yet you're feeling young, and yet you are moving smoothly on with life. Nothing wearisome for you. Life is wonderful. Life is a challenge. There is nothing boring in my life. I'm 90 years of age. But Allahumma Jalla Jalaluhu. Is it our masjid? No. Everything is exciting, nothing is boring. But when you are on the wrong path, Sheikh, I get the email, I don't know what to do. Sheikh, I don't like this place where I'm living. Sheikh, where should I go? What should I do? If you're going on the wrong path, then you're going to end up confused. Yes. Unsettled. Yes. Restless. You're neither here, you're neither there. If you are traveling on the wrong path. And so Surah Al-Kahf is giving you a means by which you can test your own self. Are you sailing smoothly? Or are you just drifting? You don't know where you're going. When Musa alayhi salam had enough of this wearisome journey, he stopped. He said, bring the food. I'm hungry, let's eat. Then the young man said, oh, I forgot to tell you. But Allah says, no, he didn't forget. Shaitan caused him to forget. And Shaitan can cause all of us to forget, including me. And so we always pray to Allah and beg Him for forgiveness and beg Him to get us on a path which is better than the one of forgetfulness. عسى أن يهديني ربي لأقرب من هذا رشدا. I forgot to tell you what happened. The fish came alive and jumped out of the basket and made its way into the water. Musa alayhi salam said, but that is what we are looking for. Now let's go back quickly. So they went back to the rock. And when they went back to the rock, they saw this man sitting on the rock. In Sahih Bukhari we are told that Musa alayhi salam greeted him, maybe assalamu alaikum. So the man looked at him, greeting like that, in a place like this, who are you? So he says, I'm Musa. I'm Musa. Now listen, listen. I hope the Jews are listening. He said, which Musa? Musa of Banu Israel, that one. So he is not Banu Israel. He is not Banu Israel. But he is more learned than Banu Israel. So you are not the most learned in the world. You are not the most learned in the world. Those who follow Khidr alayhi salam, they are more learned than you are. He said, yes, I am that Musa of Banu Israel. In that case, look at the beauty of the statement, the way a learned man speaks. A learned man never has arrogance. A learned man never has pride. Those who have arrogance and pride, Allah takes away your knowledge. In that case, Allah has given to you knowledge that I don't have. How nicely. And Allah has given to me knowledge that you don't have. And then the Quran continues now with the story. This was in the hadith. So he meets Khidr alayhi salam sitting on the rock. And Allah now describes Khidr alayhi salam as his abd. Abd. Indicating that an abd, meaning a servant, he has to be a person. A person, not a jinn, not an angel. An abd, a person. But he says about Khidr alayhi salam, آتيناه رحمة من عندنا وعلمناه من لدنا علما. Two things. I gave him knowledge directly from me. I gave him knowledge directly from me. But he didn't stop there. I gave him something else. And so this is a marriage. You have to have these two for it to work. I gave him knowledge and I gave him rahmah. Rahmah. Rahmah is kindness. Rahmah is compassion. Rahmah is to be able to feel for others, to be merciful. And so knowledge and kindness always come together. If you want knowledge, you must show kindness. Kindness and compassion must be written all over you. A person who is kind and compassionate is also forgiving. So such a person would never say, I'll never forgive you. But Lord, forgive me. No. You must be prepared to forgive. Forgive all sins. Allah says, Inna Allah yaghfiru dhunuba jami'a. Allah is prepared to forgive all sins. Why can't you? And so now we have a very important lesson to send to them, the Jews. A very important lesson, that you cannot reach that knowledge that he has. No matter how you travel, you will never reach that knowledge that he has, the most learned of all men, unless you not only get knowledge from Allah, but you also have kindness and compassion written all over you. It seems to be impossible for the Zionists, for they are an arrogant people, a proud and haughty people, and they are responsible for barbarous oppression. Is it time as yet for the Azan? Yeah, please. Bismillahi awwaluhu wa akhiruh. The most learned of all men. In akhiru zaman is not only one who gets knowledge from above and who combines that knowledge that is internally received with knowledge that is externally acquired and harmoniously integrates them. Majma'ul Bahrain. But the most learned of men of all men in akhiru zaman is the one who not only has that knowledge which can penetrate reality, but is also a person with kindness and compassion written all over him. And this is the sunnah of the Prophet. Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam was a person with kindness and compassion written all over him. And so in looking for your leaders, in looking for your guides in the years that lie ahead, the young ones I'm now talking to, look for such people who follow in the path of Khidr alayhi salam. Musa alayhi salam says to him, I want to follow you so I can learn from what Allah has given to you. Are you listening, Banu Israel? This is your prophet talking. Huh? You do well. You would do well to do what he is doing, to go and search for those who have more knowledge than you have, and step down from your arrogant pedestal. Khidr alayhi salam gives an answer. It's very important. But before we share that answer with you, we have to take up the link between Khidr and Dajjal. We know that the knowledge that Khidr has is not the mechanical knowledge, you know. You went to university, you did all the courses, you passed the exam, you studied this kitab, that kitab, that kitab, that kitab, that kitab. You can roll out the names. You know, mechanical knowledge. You just have to keep on like a machine, repeating it. The knowledge that this man has is different, because the knowledge that he has can revive the dead. That's why the earth becomes so green, like Cameron Highlands. Green. Wherever he goes and he transmits knowledge, it is like raindrops falling from the sky. And those raindrops penetrate the heart. This is a different kind of knowledge. And the dead hearts come to life. Dajjal is different from Khidr. Dajjal brings you back to life when you are dead. Dajjal takes the living and make them dead. So they're walking and they're looking as though they're alive, but they're dead. Their hearts are dead. And so there's a world of difference between Khidr alayhi salam and Dajjal. The Prophet said alayhi salatu wasalam, every prophet has warned his people about Dajjal. And the Prophet Nuh alayhi salam warned his people about Dajjal. But I am going to tell you something no one ever said before me. Dajjal sees with his left eye. He's blind in the right eye. It looks like a bulging grape, but your Lord is not one-eyed. Between his eyes on his forehead is written the word kafir, kafara. And every mu'min will be able to read kafir. Whether he is katib or ghayru katib, whether he is literate or illiterate, he still be able to read. So Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu will be able to read kafir. But Abu Jahl will not be able to read. Why? What's wrong with Abu Jahl? So we send him to the eye specialist. We might probably have an eye specialist here tonight. We send him to the eye specialist. What's wrong with his eyes? Why can't he read? And the report comes back, he has 20/20 vision, nothing wrong with his eyes. Well, then why can't he read? Ali radiallahu ta'ala who can read, but Abu Jahl cannot. Or maybe Ali is not reading with these eyes. What? Do we have any other eyes beside these eyes? I studied at Harvard. I studied at Cambridge. I studied at the Sorbonne. They never told us anything about that. I did my PhD. Modern Western civilization says these are the only eyes we have. What nonsense are you talking about? Oh, didn't you read the Quran? The Quran says that in addition to these eyes, we also have other eyes. Yes. I hope you're listening, Brother Jew. Yeah. The Quran says that the heart can see. Now the Israeli Mossad is going to be worried. And the CIA is going to be worried. Because these Muslims have something we don't have. Washington does not have. London does not have. The Quran says that the heart can see. فَإِنَّهَا لَا تَعْمَى الْأَبْصَارِ. No, it's not these eyes that are blind, says Allah. وَلَكِنْ تَعْمَى الْقُلُوبُ الَّتِي فِي الصُّدُورِ. What is blind is the heart which is inside your chest. That is blind. And so we say that when Dajjal sees with his one eye, his left eye, this is our opinion, you don't have to accept it. The left eye symbolizes external sight. And when Dajjal is blind in the right eye, it symbolizes internal blindness. And all those who follow Dajjal are people who are internally blind. And so Khidr, who sees with the internal eye, is the opposite of Dajjal. The opposite of Dajjal. So now Musa alayhi salam says, I want to follow you, to learn from you. But when Musa said, I am the most learned of all men, speaking on behalf of Banu Israel, of course, the implication of that statement is that you are now internally blind. You're cut off. That's where you are now. You're cut off. So a one-eyed man wants to learn from a man who sees with two eyes. Remember, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is using Musa alayhi salam to send a message to Banu Israel. I am not saying that Nabi Musa alayhi salam is one-eyed. Astaghfirullah. So a one-eyed man wants to learn from a man who sees with two eyes. Guess what Khidr alayhi salam responds and says? These two verses are so important. I consider them to be the most important in the whole of Surah Al-Kahf. Listen. إِنَّكَ لَن تَسْتَطِيعَ مَعِيَ صَبْرًا. You will not be able to show patience with me. A one-eyed man can never show patience to learn from a man who sees with two eyes. وَكَيْفَ تَصْبِرُ عَلَى مَا لَمْ تُحِطْ بِهِ خُبْرًا. And how can you show patience in respect of that which lies beyond your comprehension. And so sometimes you got to put them in their place. When they come brashly demanding knowledge from you, put them in their place brashly. You cannot acquire knowledge from a prophet. You cannot acquire knowledge from a Khidr unless you humble yourself and listen instead of constantly questioning. Listen and wait until understanding comes to you. So Musa alayhi salam says, I promise you, I'll be patient. Okay. Well, in that case, you can follow me on this one condition. Don't ask me any questions until I explain to you. But just a minute ago, he said, I'm the most learned man of all in the whole world. So you're cut down to size. Now, don't ask me any questions until I explain to you. So he accepts. And then they travel, and the three events occurred, and I don't have the time to be leisurely with them. I wish I had the time. The first one was the boat, and he scuttled the boat. And Musa alayhi salam was quite annoyed. Why did you do that? What a bad thing you've done. Did I not tell you not to ask any questions? He said, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. And then they proceed, and he killed the boy. Oh my gosh, this is bad. This is really bad. You killed the boy, an innocent child. Why did you do that? Did I not tell you not to ask any questions? I'm sorry. If I ask any more questions, you could send me off. You could send me away. Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, commenting on this passage of the Quran, he said, I wish Musa alayhi salam had shown more patience. We would have learned more. We would have learned more. So he said, if I ask any more questions, you can send me away. And then they came to this town, which was very inhospitable. Wouldn't offer any hospitality at all. Huh? And there is a wall which someone had built, and it was collapsing. And Khidr alayhi salam from his own pocket paid for the wall to be reconstructed. And Musa alayhi salam is appalled. These people have offered no hospitality to travelers. You should at least demand a refund on the money you spent. Did I not say to you, don't ask any questions? Now this is the end. هَذَا فِرَاقُ بَيْنِي وَبَيْنِكَ. This is the end. You're going to have to leave. But before you leave, let me explain to you that which you could not understand. Let me give you the ta'wil. Ta'wil means the interpretation. Tafsir, explanation. Ta'wil, interpretation. The three events which were chosen were events which could not be understood unless interpreted. Is this by accident that Allah has chosen three events which could not be understood unless interpreted? And the interpretation is only possible with knowledge that comes from above. I hope you're listening. I hope you're listening. Because the next 20 years are going to be very interesting in this encounter between Zionism and the world of Islam. And Islamic scholarship has to be trained. Islamic scholarship has to prepare itself for this battle. The reason why I scuttle that boat is because there's a king coming to seize the boats, seize your property. And by scuttling the boat, I saved it. And when the king has gone, they can repair the boat. And so what appeared to you to be something bad wasn't bad at all. It was very wise and sensible and intelligent. And so if you base your judgment on only external observation and rational analysis, when you need to interpret, you can be wrong, as he was wrong here. A lesson for Banu Israel. Number two, the boy, obviously, who was killed, this could not have been an actual event. Why? Because it is haram to kill an innocent child. And if you kill an innocent child, you're going to have to pay for it with your life. You've got to be killed. But this is the wisest of all men. So obviously you need only 5 ringgits worth of intelligence, not more than that, to understand that this is not an actual event, but something to be interpreted. This child was lost. Someone has taken him over. He's growing crooked. In akhir zaman, someone is going to be after your children. And once he takes over your children, they're going to grow up crooked. That little son of yours is going to become a homosexual. What are you going to do when your son becomes a homosexual? And you are a father and you are a mother who worship Allah. You can't change him. What do you do? So he cut off. He killed the boy. And prayed to Allah that Allah may send them a better child. Sending a message to you in akhir zaman to scuttle your boat. Scuttle your boat. Don't go more driving around that with a Mercedes-Benz motor car. A little Kalisa would do well, and you live safer life. the big $5 million house in Damansara Heights or Srihar Tamas or wherever you are, and you have to employ guards to save, to protect you, security. Every room has a security. But if you live in a kampung house, a nice little kampung house in a kampung, and you live a life that is like the villager, you scuttle your boat. You are living a safer life with more security. And when you see your children growing up, and that mastermind has taken over, Dajjal, and you cannot correct them, you've done everything you can, cut off your ties. Cut off your ties, even though they are your children. Cut off your ties and move on without them. Otherwise they will destroy you. And that wall, beneath that wall, a believer was dying and he had 2 orphan children and he wanted to leave his wealth for them. Couldn't find an honest man, not one. Not one. Something like Lower Manhattan, you know where Wall Street is. Couldn't find an honest man. And so he dug a hole and buried the money. Sure, it couldn't be paper ringgits, they'll rot away. Had to be dinar and dirham, you know, the real money, not that bogus, fraudulent and utterly haram money. So he dug a hole and buried the money. And then he built a wall on top of it and prayed to Allah to preserve that wealth for his children. And since the wall was falling, Allah told me to reconstruct it. So there are more things that you could see. There are more things that you could see that I saw. Musa alayhi salam, your judgment was based on external observation, and you were wrong all 3 times. And my judgment was based upon internal knowledge apart from external observation, and I was able to recognize what you could not recognize, like the paper money, for example. But there is another link between Dajjal and Khidr, and I want to do that before I end. Musa alayhi salam is the head of the Ummah, Banu Israel. And they are a people who are waiting for the Messiah to come. And they heard that someone is coming to Medina. So the cream of the Jewish scholarship moved to Medina. At that time it was called Yathrib, in anticipation, waiting for this one person to come. And when Nabi Muhammad ﷺ emerged in Mecca, the Quraysh did not know how to deal with this situation. How can we tell whether or not he is indeed a true prophet? Let us send a delegation to Medina, at that time called Yathrib. And incidentally, I have just written, this book came from the printry only yesterday. Medina returns to center stage in akhir zaman, and we have it here tonight. We also have it in Bahasa, Medina kembali ke persada tumpuan di akhir zaman. We have it outside, very small, maybe about 30-40 pages. Let us send a delegation to Medina to ask the rabbis, how can we tell whether he is indeed a true prophet? The rabbis responded and said, ask him 3 questions which only a prophet can answer. And in this book we analyze Surah Al-Kahf in the modern age. We analyze those 3 questions. Number 1, ask him about the ruh, the spirit. Number 2, ask him about the great traveler who traveled to the 2 ends of the earth. Number 3, ask him about the young men in the cave. Only a prophet can answer. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends down the answers in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in sending down the answers, does something to tell them, I understand that first question is different from the other 2. The other 2 relate to akhir zaman, but the first one does not. So he sends down the answer to question 1, but he puts it in Surah Al-Isra. وَيَسَلُونَكَ عَنِ الرُّوحِ, and they question thee about the ruh. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends down the answer to the second question about the great traveler, and he puts it in Surah Al-Kahf, not in Surah Al-Isra, because Surah Al-Kahf is the surah of akhir zaman. And then he proceeds to tell us the story of Zulkarnain. But notice something, notice carefully, that in answering question 1, he repeated the question and then answered it. وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الرُّوحِ, he repeated the question and then answered it. In answering question 2, he did the same thing. وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنْ ذِي الْقَرْنَيْنِ, and they questioned thee about Dhul Qarnayn, and then he answered it. And in answering question 2, they had only asked him about 2 journeys to take, east and west. But Allah knew that the target of the question was the 3rd journey. And so he answered the question and gave the 3rd journey. And in giving the 3rd journey, he took them to Gog and Magog. That was the target of the question, Gog and Magog, who are major signs of the last day. And so obviously question 3 must also be connected to a major sign of the last day indirectly. But in answering question 3, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not repeat the question. Why? Nothing happens in the Quran by accident. I want to suggest to you that the target of the 3rd question was Dajjal. And it is because Allah wanted to keep them guessing. Keep them guessing. He does not repeat the question. And in answering the question, he does not take them to Dajjal. And so the word Dajjal does not occur in the Quran. And the word Khidr does not occur in the Quran. And Imam al-Mahdi does not occur in the Quran. And the sign of all signs of akhir zaman, namely the return of Nabi Isa alayhi salam, that also is not stated plainly in the Quran. Why? Why? Answer: because Allah wants to keep them guessing. We will understand, but they will not. And so there is a link between Dajjal and Khidr alayhi salam. Dajjal is located in Surah Al-Kahf. And it is not by accident that Khidr alayhi salam is located in Surah Al-Kahf of the Quran. I want to end now by suggesting as gently as I can, by advising that this is the road of Islamic scholarship. It is with sadness that I have to say that the world of Islamic scholarship has failed, and failed miserably, in even understanding what is happening in the world of money today, what is happening in the world economy today, what is happening in the political world today. And so you have Ikhwan al-Muslimun in Egypt and you have the Salafis in Egypt joining in elections like everybody else. Vote for me, vote for me, vote for me. Joining the circus with no knowledge. That is not the road for you. The political system which has come today has come from Dajjal. The modern secular state has come from Dajjal, and you don't even understand that. And you want to bring back Islam by going for elections in the modern secular state? Is that the Sunnah? The world of Islamic scholarship has failed, and failed miserably, in responding to the challenges of the modern age. And what you and I have to do now with our sons and our daughters is to bring a new world of Islamic scholarship to being. And that world of Islamic scholarship, which is to respond to Israel and the Zionists, has to walk the path of Khidr alayhi salam. That path to Khidr alayhi salam can only come if you also pursue Islamic spirituality. It's called tasawwuf. I wish the word tasawwuf had never been invented, because the word al-ihsan is there in the hadith. Al-ihsan, not tasawwuf. But it is the heart of Islam. So worship Allah as though you're seeing Him. أَن تَعْبُدَ اللَّهَ كَأَنَّكَ تَرَاهُ. Seeing Him with your heart. So we have to pursue the spiritual path to acquire nur in the heart with which to be able to see. Let us end with this hadith that my teacher Maulana Muhammad Fadlur Rahman Ansari rahimahullah was very fond of quoting. And this is where Islamic scholarship has to move. The Prophet said sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, the hadith is in the Sunan of Tirmidhi, ittaku firasat al-mu'min فَإِنَّهُ يَنْظُرُ بِنُورِ اللَّهِ. Fear the internal, intuitive, spiritual insight of the mu'min. For when he sees with the nur of Allah. We pray that we may now have that restlessness in our hearts, that eagerness in our hearts, brothers as well as sisters, to pursue the path of Khidr alayhi salam, that we might be blessed with knowledge flowing down upon us like a river from above. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا يا مولانا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين آمين. Tomorrow night, Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam prophesied that the time will come, a time will come when the ulama of Islam will be the worst people beneath the sky. يوشك يأتي على الناس زمان لا يبقى من الإسلام إلا اسمه لا يبقى ولا يبقى من القرآن إلا رسمه مساجدهم عامرة وهي خراب من الهدى علماؤهم شر الناس ممن تحت أديب السماء من عندهم تخرج الفتنة وفيهم تعود. This is the hadith this person is referring to. How can we recognize, if we are living in akhir zaman, how can we recognize the true ulama? Not the one who are the worst people beneath the sky, the true ulama. Simple. You will find them to be a people who are kind and compassionate and humble and forgiving, not arrogant. No. Not with so many titles before the name and so many titles after the name. No. You'll find them to be a people who are spiritually elevated. Spiritually elevated. And you'll find them to be a people whose knowledge is such that they have the capacity to respond to the world in which they are now living. Not yesterday. They can understand and they can penetrate the reality of the world today. And they have the capacity to respond to it appropriately. They are the people of Khidr alayhi salam. Look for them, and when you follow them, when you find them, follow them. What is the sign for the Black Flag Army? There are some who dispute the status of the hadith, saying it is weak. But the evidence is clear that only one part of the world of Islam has escaped from being colonized and westernized. And people in Afghanistan don't wear black jackets and ties. No. The people of Afghanistan wear their own native clothing and they keep the beard. Washington has not been successful in getting the Afghan to shave off his beard, except of course Karzai. So that part of the world has not been colonized. No. And it is that part of the world which has successfully resisted British aggression 100 years ago. Successfully resisted the Soviet Union which invaded Afghanistan for 12 years and was defeated, and has successfully resisted NATO for the last 10 years, the mightiest military force in the world. So don't look down your nose on the people of Afghanistan. No. They have done what nobody else has been able to do in the world of Islam. That is the part of the world from which the army is going to come, that is symbolized by the black flags. We mean by black flags, we mean the authentic Islamic resistance to oppression in Khorasan. That is the black flags. Don't seek to box it into some kind of a sectarian context. No. All those in Afghanistan who are struggling sincerely in Allah's name to remove the oppressor belong to the authentic Islamic resistance. That jihad has already started, the black flags. It has already started. We don't need any fatwa. And no one can stop it. Not Obama, not Romney, no one can stop that jihad. Until eventually, maybe 10, 20 years from now, it liberates every territory in a straight line until it reaches Elia. Word Jerusalem is not in the Quran, no. Baitul Maqdis is our word in Arabic, not Jerusalem. And Elia is a Roman word. So that army will liberate Jerusalem. And at that time it won't be any peace talks in Madrid or peace talks in Detroit. He said, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, لَتُقَاتِلُنَّ الْيَهُودِ, you'll most certainly fight the Jews. وَلَا تَقْتُلُنَّهُمْ, and you'll most certainly defeat them. This is Sahih Bukhari. حَتَّى يَقُولُ الْحَجَرُ, at that time even the stones will speak. Ya Muslim, هَذَا يَهُودِيٌّ وَرَائِي فَتَعَالَ فَقْتُلْ, there's a Jew hiding behind me. Not all Jews. That's lazy scholarship. Not all Jews. Only those who are oppressors, because they are Jews who are standing with us, side by side with us. There's one who called me on Skype from London 3 times already, a Jew, to interview me, okay, on Skype. There's a Jew hiding behind me, so come and kill him, talking about the Jews who are oppressors. We have time for one more question? Yeah. Are we allowed to trade with the enemy? If you are at war with the people, does Islam permit or prohibit trade with the enemy? This beautiful religion of ours, has never, ever, ever used trade as a weapon. Never. The enemy has used it, but we have never used it. So we are not a people who shamefully impose economic sanctions. That's the Zionists. Economic sanctions upon Iran, economic sanctions upon Iraq, not Islam. We impose no economic sanctions on anyone. We wage no monetary war and economic war on anyone. We never use trade as a weapon, not Islam. Muslims are allowed to trade with anybody. Anybody. However, if we are at war with a people, you may not trade in weapons of war. Thank you. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا يا مولانا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين آمين.
ولا أقوى على نار الجحيم الله فهب لي توبة واغفر ذنوبي فإنك غافر الذنب العظيم إلهي لست واوصي أهلا ولا أقوى على نار الجحيم الله فهب لي توبة واغفر ذنوبي فإنك غافر الذنب العظيم Tuhanku, aku tidak layak untuk syurgamu, tetapi aku tidak pula sanggup menanggung siksa nerakamu. Dari itu kurniakanlah ampunan kepadaku, ampunkanlah dosaku. Sesungguhnya Engkaulah pengampun dosa-dosa besar. Tuhanku, aku tidak layak untuk syurgamu, tetapi aku tidak pula sanggup menanggung siksa nerakamu. Dari itu kurniakanlah ampunan kepadaku, ampunkanlah dosaku. Sesungguhnya Engkaulah pengampun dosa-dosa besar. Ilahi lastu lil firdausi a'la wala aqwa ala naril jahim. Allah fahab li tawbatan waghfir dhunubi fa innaka ghafiru dhanbil azim. Ilahi lastu lil firdausi a'la wala aqwa ala naril jahim. Allah fahab li tawbatan